This conference will now be recorded.
Gonna have walking trails for the subdivision.
Yeah, Cottage Grove Town Board will hold a special meeting, public meeting beginning at 6 p.m. on Monday, August 30th, 2021 at Town Hall, 4058 County Road. And we have a quorum present. Meeting was posted at the Town Hall and on the website. We'll call the meeting to order and we'll stand for the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have discussion with the City of Madison Principal Planner Brian Grady about the city's proposal for an intergovernmental agreement, and Jeff.
Gregor.
Thank you. Is here also. Huh?
What was the last name?
Gregor?
Gregor.
Gregor?
Gregor.
Oh, Gregor.
Yep.
Should I come up here? Or-
Sure. Make yourself at home wherever you want.
Kind of tight quarters, but there's more chairs if you both want to sit there.
I'll stay here.
Yeah, thank you for having us out here this evening. Again, my name is Brian Grady with the City of Madison Planning Division. I've been with the city for about 15 years in the planning department and joined by Jeff Gregor, who's also been working on this. Our two sons have been the point people for this project so far. I think everyone has a copy of the materials, and so we have the one-page outline basically with some provisions, the text describing the proposal, and then also the map. So needs a copy, just let me know, but maybe you're all set. And so the city, we're always trying to reach out to our adjacent municipalities in areas where the city could grow in the future to try to identify opportunities to have boundary agreements or have more certainty on the edge of the city. And so we have a number of agreements already. Town of Madison, agreement with the city of Fitchburg, we have agreement with the town of Burke and a few other municipalities, town of Blooming Grove. Part of the Blooming Grove just came into the city just about 8-9 months ago. We have an agreement with the town of Middleton on the west side. And now we propose this to the town of Cottage Grove for this east side, what could be a city growth area. So again, we're always looking for certainty in terms of our kind of long range planning. It makes more sense for the city to have certainty as to where the boundary line might be. It can help us with planning facilities like fire stations, roads, utilities. It can also provide certainty to property owners in terms of having some certainty about knowing what municipality they might be talking to and if they have a development proposal or have some things in mind. And so we got the proposal to the town here. We have also been in communications with the village of Cottage Grove. We haven't, there hasn't been like anything formalized with the village quite yet, but I think we'll keep continuing conversations with them to see if they're interested in agreement, and the agreement could dovetail nicely with what the proposal is we have for you all, for the town here to consider.
Right.
And so basically just the overall overview, the one-page provisions are kind of describe the map and what takes place in the map. Basically, in the area in blue, we're calling area A.
Mm-hmm.
And so the city, in this case, is looking to have the possibility, I'll stress the word possibility, to grow out to that blue line into that area A over the course of.
That would only be if the landowners so chose to annex.
Right, yep. And the city, it's I can't think of many examples certainly of a city practically rezoning, annexing people's property. And so it really is up to property owners requesting that. If they request annexation to the city usually says yes, but yes, it's up to the property owners to request that. And so that's why I mentioned again, the possibility the city could grow in there if the property owner was interested in coming into the city.
And if not, in 40 or 50 years, it would become the City of Madison at the end of the agreement.
And under this scenario, it would just stay in the town, basically. It would stay in the town. If it doesn't annex to the city, it would still remain the town. But we have included language in here where after 40 years, which is a long-term agreement, again, which provides certainty, after 40 years, if both municipalities would agree, that this would just renew for another 10 years, basically. And so it just kind of gets pushed out. Again, if there's mutual agreement in continuing this. And so, yeah, again, it's just if the possibility of the city could grow into the area, but that's not guaranteed, not forcing anything onto property owners. It's up to them as to whether they would want to annex into the city of Madison. And so we try to draw a line that follows Vilas Road, it follows Vilas Hope, main north-south roads there. We also follow the Door Creek corridor, which includes a very wide open space area with wetland floodplain. So we're trying to split that wetland floodplain area. And then again, these are areas that would make the most sense for us, the city of Madison, to grow into, basically. In exchange for that certainty, where up the blue line, the city could grow in that area. There are some limitations on what town property owners could do while remaining in the town.
Right.
In that case, they can divide their lot one time. This says nothing about conditional uses. You can see the conditional use. And these provisions are very similar to agreements that we have, again, with Burke, Blooming Grove, the town of Middleton. These are provisions that, again, we're used to them. These other towns are used to them. They've worked out pretty well between the two municipalities. So in exchange for that certainty to the city, we can give some certainty and flexibility to the town. And so in this case, it would be waiving the city's ETJ, exterritorial jurisdiction review of land divisions. We would be waiving that for anything past this boundary line.
To the east.
Again, for that
Past
40-year
Half
time
the
period.
blue, right?
Right.
Yep, past the blue. So we would waive that. And then in the area in purple, area B is just an area that, again, we cannot go past the blue line during this 40-year time frame unless we were to work out some different arrangement over time. But the area in purple there, area B, we would just leave that in our comprehensive plan, which looks out decades in the future in terms of where the city might want to grow in the future. Again, if the right conditions are there, we would leave that in our comprehensive plan as a long-term growth area. But again, that would be still no ETJ review from us in that area, and we cannot annex past that blue line in the meantime. So again, it's just kind of it's signaling that we still may have some interest in that area that's in purple there, area B.
Real quick question. Can you repeat, what did you say about ETJ review in the purple area again, please?
That
Don't have it.
They wouldn't.
yeah would
In
not.
Area B, this area, they would not have ETJ anything east of that.
Right,
blue
okay,
line.
all right.
Or in the
And
purple
would it be
area.
Or the
subject,
purple area.
and because it's not directly in the blue area, the once and done provision that's in the blue area for land divisions would not apply to the purple at this time, or would it?
Right, it would not apply to the purple,
Okay.
where you can more easily, almost administratively, do one lot split. That would
Okay.
not apply. We would waive our ETJ, but there is also Village of McFarland and
Oh, yes.
Groves, so you all know it well. So
Yeah.
it doesn't completely go away, but I'll note that, and we checked with Jeff and I checked with our colleagues in the city attorney's office. So what we would be doing through this process, if this IGA were approved, if we agree to the situation here, we would basically pare back our ETJ review to the blue line. We would not go out 12 and 18, for example. If we would pare ours back under this scenario, it doesn't give McFarland more review. So right now, and it's complicated to figure out this is part of that uncertainty thing. So it's complicated, even know like who's reviewing what, where all of our ETJ lines are kind of meeting, and Jeff's he's the person that updates the map every six months or so to kind of figure that out. When we pare ours back, it doesn't mean that McFarland can suddenly jump into our ETJ area and start reviewing those. They can't jump into our pared back area. That basically, we pare ourselves back, we pare ours back, and that would result in less ETJ for you all. So McFarland can't like fill that void. And so there is some benefit to the purple area, or we're pulling that back. again, there's benefit to the 12 and 18 and area, there's also benefit there. McFarland and the village couldn't like fill the void that we're leaving. We're just basically leaving ETJ review on the table, basically. We're just kind of carrying our review back.
Go ahead.
As an example, in the blue area at the very bottom, I'm trying to read what it says. Looks like Terran HE and then Terran LLC. There's a little parcel down there at the bottom. Okay, that happens to be directly adjacent to the village of McFarland. Okay, were this agreement signed, sealed, and delivered, okay, would it, what happens if, say, that particular property owner decides, I don't want to be a part of the city of Madison, I want to go south? Does that negate or prevent or anybody from doing anything differently than?
No.
It does not, it does not. And so this would be, it's just it would be a town and city of Madison agreement. And so only applies to these two parties. Would not apply to McFarland. In this case, McFarland, if that property owner said McFarland could annex, they could annex whatever they wanted, whatever property owners wanted to annex to McFarland for, they could do that. And same with the Village Cottage Road. This would not apply to the Village Cottage Road either.
Yeah.
As I said, we have been in communications with them with a very similar map. And so we hope that we can reach an agreement there. But yeah, it would not apply to Village McFarland in this case. And so we would, it's just between the town and the city.
Yeah. And if the village of Cottage, say this is, again, this is done between you and us. And the village of Cottage Grove comes and says, I don't like it. You know, theoretically, their ETJ extends out into what would be the blue area to the west, obviously.
It doesn't.
Huh?
The ETJ doesn't extend to the west into the blue area.
It comes out so it's the midpoint between the city line here and the town line, former town of Blooming Grove.
Yeah.
And so here, their ETJ comes out just a little bit into here. And so that,
Well, okay.
theirs would technically still apply to a town. I think having a town, if this agreement was approved, there'd also be the limitation where you can do the one lot split. And so, yeah, that.
So there's an area, for example, with McFarland's ETJ in the bottom, there's areas in the blue that wouldn't be, that you would waive ETJ if you had it, but you don't. Mark Farland does, right?
Right, yeah, and so, and back to this village situation here, and so that there's an area right along here. Let's go to a different map. So I don't know if you can see this at all, but there's an area that is in the village's ETJ. And so that's, they would also need to approve that, you know, that this provides the ability to do the one lot split. The only place that is truly guaranteed is where it's within the City of Madison ETJ, which is in most of this blue area. But yes, in this sliver of village down here and in areas down closer to McFarland, then those villages could exercise their ETJ and review that. Again, with the, we propose also the village to have basically a similar line up here. And if that's the case, if the village and the city agreed to the same line, we would then adjust our ETJ to follow that line. And that would get rid of these overlapping areas, basically.
Okay.
Is there a map? Have you done a map that would show like what do we actually gain that we have no ETJ when it is all? You know, I mean, what areas open up now for us to develop in that aren't part of the blue, but also aren't part of either McFarland's or the village's ETJ?
All the way to North Star Road.
No, yeah, but some of the areas to the south, yes.
Just pass this around, and I'll point to it up here. Yeah, so
You don't have anything to the north that isn't in somebody.
So this hashed is what we gain, is that right?
yeah, and so the city, under this proposal, the city would be foregoing everything in this red crosshatch. So it's area just north of the tracks near Door Creek Golf Course. it's the area in purple along here. Basically, yeah, where Sime Road, between Vilas Hope and I'm sorry, if I'm right, in Vilas Road here, where Sime Road kind of juts in, waving that, and then also this is N in 1218, so we'll be waving this as well. So this is a very crazy map with all lines together, but basically the crosshatch is what we would be removing our ETJ, and again, McFarland would not come in and supersede any of this. So this is where we would be waving the ETJ in the cross section.
And with Blooming Grove going away, you could move your ETJ even further east.
It's reflected in that map.
Oh, it
The
is?
stuff that came in at the end of December. Yeah.
But you have more power, Madison does, than the village of Cottage Grove.
Yeah,
So you don't really need their agreement, but you'd like to have it, but you don't need it, correct?
Well, it would, we would like to reach an agreement because, again, because of, just like with McFarland, you know, it would only be a town-city agreement, and so it only pertains to things that pertains to us too.
Yeah.
And so we would love to follow through with something with the Village Cottage Grove, and then we would likely contact McFarland next. That would, our town is our focus right now, but we'd probably contact McFarland next to see if we could reach an agreement.
But on this map here that you just handed us, that shows the village of McFarland all the way in that.
So they review all of this right here, and so yes, of the purple, the village reviews about a third of it. We review about a third of it, and the adjustment percentages. The village a quarter, 40%, 40%, somewhere in that range. And so yeah, in this area, where the crosshatch is, there would be no ETJ in the town. Now that is based on these current municipal boundaries. So if McFarland were to annex even more, then that reduces what's being waived basically. Same with the village. The village were to come over here, that would provide some uncertainty. But at least we've been in conversation with the village of Cottage Grove, and we feel like we can reach an agreement on a boundary line there. But yeah, we have less certainty with again, the other two municipalities. But Madison has, the reason we have more is the city is at 3 miles.
3 miles.
3 miles.
The village is a mile and a half.
Yeah, so we have a little more, which extends out to the end.
Overlap, you guys negotiate that.
And where it overlaps, it's basically, Jeff here draws the midpoint between the two municipalities, and that, again, that line shifts with annexations.
One, in the northern part of the blue area, you'll see where it says Mark's Farms Limited. Say, for example, he decides that he's done farming and wants to create a small subdivision. All right, if we have an agreement already in place, would that preclude him from doing something like that? And we have an agreement with the village, so we can eliminate their interference, if you will, or whatever else like that. But the reason why I picked that property, because it's directly across the street from an existing development in the township currently. Would this agreement preclude that property owner from doing something like that?
It would preclude it in the town if there was more than just one lot split. It would not preclude it from having it in the city. And so of all the properties in the blue area, this provides one lot split. If you have, if you have
35 acres.
5 acres or more, you can do one lot split.
Okay.
This does not cover conditional uses, which are things that people apply for. But yeah, this would preclude a town subdivision, if that's what you're referring to. It would preclude a town subdivision. Yeah. Any more than a one-time lot split. And we treat properties under the same ownership. We treat them as one property. So you can't like split a property to create two and then split those two again.
Well, yeah, I mean, if it came right from the get-go, would that preclude him from applying at the city to say, hey, I would like to do this? Or would it be automatically just, sorry?
He would have to ask for annexation for a subdivision. Otherwise, he could only do one lot split.
So he couldn't then because of the fact, well, in this particular case, he does, but If he didn't own all the way to the city line, then there would be absolutely no way because he couldn't jump.
Unless he got the neighbor, drug the neighbor in.
Right, yep, okay.
You said it doesn't include CUPs. Do you mean that it doesn't preclude CUPs, that they could still apply for CUPs or that they couldn't?
We
Conditional use permits we could still do.
can still do, we have language here about rezonings. And so we're basically, these are all mirrored off of our cooperative plans with Blooming Grove, Burke and Middleton. And so you can still do a conditional use permit. That's not considered rezoning. It's somewhat temporary, in many cases. And so you can still do the conditional use permits. We would likely comment on them like we might now. If they're going to be in the blue area, we'd likely comment on them as they go through the town and the county process. But it does not apply to that. And then for the rezoning, basically you can rezone as long as you stay in an ag or a residential, as long as you don't go out of ag zoning or go out of residential zoning, that you can do some rezonings if there's things like ag to ag, or residential to accommodate a lot split, for example. You just can't go from ag or residential to a commercial or to an industrial because that would then signify a more significant development. And so we're trying to overall, preserve these larger tracts of land that the city could, if the property owner is up for it, would like to do it, could then develop into serve the utilities. And like in the case of the Marks Farm property, it's right next to an MMSD interceptor. And so the fact that sanitary sewer is right there, that might be a pretty good incentive for them to do something in the city, because the sewer is sitting right there, basically.
Now that you brought that up, when MMSD put that interceptor in back many years ago, we were given, part of our agreement, what we got for letting them, this happen and stuff like that was the town of Cottage Grove. Should we have the need or the desire to hook up to it, we would be able to, okay, without any other than construction costs. There wouldn't be any fees attached.
We're still able to do that.
We would still be able to do that, correct?
Yeah, we checked into this topic, and nothing in this agreement would preclude that, would change that. The interceptor is sitting right there. And so yeah, if a town subdivision was in desired or need of sanitary sewer, access the interceptor, the city of Madison wouldn't pay for it, but
No, right.
it could be accommodated. It's still sitting there. It's still in close proximity. That subdivision does drain towards Door Creek in that area, and so what I think could happen is either MMSD would extend that to that area, or if the Marsh Farms property developed, we would obviously, you all would be saying, hey, can you reserve a path for this interceptor to be extended in case it's needed in the future? And I'm sure we can work something like that out.
Okay.
Just to, not to preclude that. And basically, whenever the city, it's probably city and village, whenever they're going to send out sanitary sewers, they usually size it for what it's going to serve, just in kind of a worst case scenario. So I think that would probably be incorporated into the sizing. And maybe some sort of range if we worked out. But that'd be sometime in the future, if that need were there. But nothing this IGA would change that situation.
Other questions?
How did you arrive at the line? I mean, some of it appears to be quite logical. Others, I see that you're cutting property owners partially in the ET area, in the boundary agreement area, and part of it remains in the township. Specifically the Oak Crest Farm near the railroad tracks there. To the south, you make a jog over, it looks like a 40, you jog over to include that part of, the farm, but yet immediately to the east of your line, it's still several parcels of that Oak Crest farm.
Yeah, we tried to, I think along Vilas and the Church of Vilas Hope there, that's an area again where the city is looking for contiguous tracts where the city could grow into if the conditions are right. When you get down to the tracks there, it's and where Door Creek does a 90, and there's kind of this other wetland floodplain area just that kind of crosses the tracks. In that area between Hamburg Farms LLC and Oak Farms, we basically just split the difference. I mean, Jeff and I basically just came up with this line, looking at environmental features, looking at property ownership. We try to keep property owners on one side or the other of the line, but that wasn't always the case. We do start following the wider wetland floodplain area associated with Door Creek to the south. But I would say in the Hamburg Farms, Oak Crest, we just kind of split the difference. You could argue that the line could go along Yankee Road there. You could argue that the Oak Farms could be on our side of the line. So we just kind of split that. On the Hamburg Farms one along the tracks, the city does have a 30-foot wide. We own 30 feet just south of the tracks. I don't know if we bought that or if that was dedicated at some point. And that's for a bike path to connect the Cap City Trail, and the
Where is that?
Glacial Drumlin Trail.
Thank you.
And so we own 30 feet on just south of the tracks. And so again, we split the difference. I would say
I like this.
if over time, if we were to reach an agreement here and over time, we figure out like, hey, maybe the line should get bumped over, one direction or the other for a compelling reason. If both sides agree to something, then we just amend the agreement to make that modification. And we do that from time to time. You can't pick the future. And so if there's some compelling reason to shift the line and both sides agree, or there's two areas that something that the town might want to modify and the city might want to modify, we could do a possible swap in that case there. But yeah, it's easier down to the south here where we're primarily following Door Creek or what drains to Door Creek. Up here, it's Vilas and Vilas Hope are just areas where the city could extend into and where we start to bump up to where there's, of course, cases where there's a lot of town lots that the city would it wouldn't make sense to extend city utilities and infrastructure in those areas, basically.
Now, we just did like an expansion on the east side of Gala Way. Yeah.
Larger lots.
Yeah. I mean, how is that going to affect any of those ones? Isn't that in your blue area?
Won't affect them. I think you've already given them the okay.
Yeah, if it's basically whatever lots exist, if we reach an agreement, whenever that agreement goes into effect, at that point, we just map all the lots and who owns them and consider those contiguous ownership lots to be parcels to be one lot.
Okay.
We keep record of that, and they can do one split from there. So yeah, whatever exists when an agreement were to go in place.
More questions?
I noticed the Funkhauser property, which is in the city of Madison now. Has that sold? You know?
I believe they're under contract. I believe they're under contract with somebody, but I don't know that it's sold yet.
Because I saw a for sale sign there and then it's gone. And because I knew that was right on the boundary. And ultimately, it does affect, what's happening here. Sort of related, but can I ask about the bike trail since you pointed out you do have that land? What is information about when that will be completed and connect to Madison?
Yeah, that's still being worked on.
Still trying to acquire property rights, aren't you?
Yeah, and I think you'll see these little slivers. So there's a little sliver here, 30 feet. There's a little sliver here. We actually own on the south side tracks there. We own on the north side of tracks there. So we've acquired some land. I think maybe the county and village has also acquired some land, but there are some areas where there's wetlands on both sides of the tracks. And I know there's an area closer to the village coming up right over here. There's wetlands on both sides and they haven't been able to find the exact route yet. So still working on the route, but city, village, Dane County, all very interested in connecting these two paths, obviously, and it's just a matter of time. Hopefully we'll find the best route and get that done.
We spent a lot of time already, a
Yeah,
lot of time.
Yeah, I'm probably measured in decades. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
agreed, yeah.
Yeah.
More questions?
So you said you're gonna have to deal with the village on your line, correct?
Yep.
Because they cross each other,
The ETJ line.
right?
Yeah, and so, so right now, if something were to come up, we just figure out who's closest, basically.
Oh, this is a good one.
But there is, there's with the cemetery and the drainage that cuts through there, the low area, there is already a bit of a natural. There is some natural features and the cemetery open space use that could make some sense for a city or village line. Obviously, the Mondale Heights subdivision provides a bit of a break there. And so we, again, we're always, reach out to all of our neighbors to try to gain certainty on where we can grow and it makes the most sense.
Thoughts, questions?
Well, how do you take in doing this when there's so much of that land between, the edge of, the full area here is unbuildable. Do you agree with that or?
Yeah, where it's green, this is high level mapping. It's not precise, but where it's green, it's an indication that's likely not buildable.
But it just seems to me that that area, it seems like, in my opinion, it just seems like that's where it should end. When you can't do anything for a whole massive big area there, you're skipping over that to go right to the village, edge of the village almost.
And
You know what I mean? You get what I'm saying?
up to the north there?
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's
well, this whole area here, that's maybe good for swamp grass, but I don't know how you could be used for anything.
yeah, a lot of the green is wetland and floodplain in this area. I mean, the desire for the city to grow in this area is one, we've put made a pretty major investment in this Door Creek Park, us along with Dane County. And so we actually think it would be nice to have the city extend up this area. The one thing that our Parks Department, for example, wish they would have done a little differently is you don't have the best like public access. A lot of it is homes that back up to the open space. And so they would love to have, some streets that come up here that then front on that park, provide a little better access to it. We can take advantage of that open space amenity, likely add on to it. Either with developers are required to dedicate the parks or for our own park dedication funds. We add on to it, we add a neighborhood and add onto the backside of that park. And then also for us to the north, the town of, right at the map, the town of Burke will come in over time. We'll be growing in this area closer to Ryan Road in the not too distant future. We have approved subdivisions here, and so the city will likely, our scenario would grow into the general area over time. And so this is again a long-term thing. 40 years is a long time. It's possible that the city could grow in this area, and that can provide another route through to the city to the north. And then down here, Yeah, down here where there's more green and there's green surrounding areas, maybe the city never develops in that area. Maybe it just stays like that. Down here, we do have a contiguous area that is developable. We're showing some industrial development just north of the landfill here. And maybe over time that development, whether it's industrial or some other kind, just continues on. But all would be required to have sanitary sewer there, which takes time, water takes time. And so it's it preserves the possibility for the city to grow in exchange for waiving the ETJ, providing the one lot split for the property owners. It preserves the possibility, but we're not going to grow in areas that, don't make financial sense for the city.
Mhm.
So that's just what would make the most sense for us, basically.
Well, we've never been annexed by the city of Madison, but we've been annexed, I mean, big time by the village, massive with areas they've annexed that have been sitting there for quite a long time that have never been built on.
Yeah.
So, my point is that you guys have never really been a problem for us until we just, and I'm not even saying this is a problem,
Mhm.
but we've never really had to deal with you on this before.
No, not regarding annexations. And it's probably better to do things before it's a problem. And so that's kind of what this could be right here. Be a little more proactive.
That's south of the tracks, where you take in so much of the green, is that good, bad? You really want that?
Is that mainly trying to keep landowners on one side or the other?
Yeah, and in the case of it is a small developable area. I think in the case of Hamburg Farms, it was probably trying to keep both Hamburg Farms on the city side of the line.
Have they come and talked to you about this?
We have not talked with them about this. No. But I mean the Oak Crest Farms.
But then south, you
There's
got
just too much
Weber,
land.
that's most of that 40 is green. Same with Kyle Matthews and Ronald Forley. I mean,
Yeah. Wait.
most of those 40s are all green. Should that line jag over to the west, the end of that 40 and down?
Yeah, and along Weber and Matthews and I think it's Floyd. We're following just Door Creek in that area, and so
Yeah.
that seemed like a good line. We always have the best situation where we have the line on the open space corridor where you can't do anything with that land anyways, and so it helps to alleviate issues. But if there's if the town is interested in proposing a modification to this, we would probably look to offset it somewhere else, I guess. We try to, if it squeezes in this case, we would try to look for a different area that wasn't quite as high on our priority list, but we would look to add that back into the blue area.
So leave it alone.
I can't develop it either.
What's
I
that?
can't develop it either if it's
Nobody's
green.
going to develop it. It's wet.
We don't have the money to anyway.
Even if, no matter how much money you got, it's wet. It'll only get wetter with climate change.
Does the city have a certain acreage? You know, your comment just kind of struck me as a little bit surprising that if we ask to move that line over, as Chris discussed, that you will want more land somewhere else. And I guess why?
It's basically what, at a certain point, things don't make sense anymore, and so we've I definitely put a lot of time into this line. I think it's pretty well thought out, and so to modify it would, it's just obviously less desirable for us.
So it's kind of two things. Is one, looking for a logical boundary. If you go to a parcel line, I guess you could say that's logical, but an environmental feature is going to always be there. A parcel line may shift one way or another over time.
Yeah.
So
But you're already following a parcel line, just 140 to the east.
So we're trying to balance a lot of things, trying to keep larger parcels on one side versus the other. Another aspect is we looked at, if this area were to develop, where would the sanitary sewer go? And likely it's going to go to the low spot, and that's in that green area.
Creek.
Right. So for development to occur in a logical manner, that may be where the sanitary sewer line ends up. So it would be kind of critical in that aspect for the stuff on the west side of the line. So there's a lot of factors going into where that line gets drawn.
And in the case of the, I guess the Humbert Farms and Oakcrest Farms, Jeff and I talked about this. You could argue that it could be on, the line could be on, it could come down Mouse Hope over Yankee. You could do what we have, or you could even argue that the line should include the Oakcrest Farms, which has a small area that's not green. And would anything happen on that little sliver? Hard to say, but you could say, well, we'll put the blue line between the two Oakcrest Farms property to the east of there where it's solidly green and there's just nothing can happen on that. So put the line where there's never going to be any development proposal, there's not going to be any dispute, because that's solidly green through there. So yeah, overall, we're just trying to preserve the chunks. And if the property owners in this area, if they're on our side of the line, they do the ability to they can split that one time, which can whether it's provide out another lot for yourself or to sell or a family member. It does provide that option, but we're just trying to preserve those larger chunks, because for us, the infrastructure that comes with the city, we just need larger areas to make that worthwhile.
So you mentioned putting contiguous ownership and calling it one parcel. So for example, I don't know what they still have for splits, but for example, Kyle Matthews has 240s there. So nowadays, if he had never used any splits, he would have two, one per 35. Are you saying that you would clump that all together and he could split that 80 once?
We would pump that together. That's how we've drawn up our
And then sell the other one.
our
No,
previous.
he wouldn't have it at all.
Sure he would.
What you're saying, no, you're combining the two.
For splitting it into one residential lot. He can only make one lot, but he still has that other RDU. He could sell that to somebody else and move it out of that area.
Oh, yeah. What would this do to our transfer of development rights?
That's what I was just thinking. I wonder if a guy like this, Mark's land, which looks like it's all buildable, and he'd like to get splits,
It's not gonna do.
Huh?
Is he in the blue in area A?
Right here, yeah.
What if he wanted to sell his splits for elsewhere in the, right now, everything is in a sending area. If they want to sell them, they can sell them for a building somewhere else in the town. Would
Yeah.
they still have those to sell if they lived in the blue area?
Yes.
As long as it beats the agreement, I think we would be out of
So
that.
that
No,
puts
no,
it-
I mean, you're saying something different than he is.
Yeah.
No,
Yes, you are.
it's not in the agreement that he can't sell a residential development unit somewhere else outside of the blue area. Right?
I think we're just out. We're
Yeah,
not involved in that.
yeah, well,
Yeah. So in Kyle's, where he has 240s, he could split one and put one house on there.
On the 80,
Somewhere on the 80, he could put
which I
one
have a
house.
problem
And
with.
that's it.
If
His
there's-
other RDU that he still has, he could sell that to someone on the far east end of the township.
So that would
Where we don't want the development to
so
go.
that
He
would
could go to Resop or.
so that would deed restrict that
Mhm.
property.
What's that?
That would deed restrict that property in favor of the town and the county. But then if it was annexed,
Once it's annexed, it
later on,
goes away.
that's gone. Yeah.
that goes away. So it's really not preserving anything in the long run. But
Right.
yeah.
But he still has that development right that he could sell. He can't use it on his property because he can only split it once. but he could sell it somewhere else.
I guess the way Madison is counting properties. I mean, Mark's has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different parcels that I see right here. Out of all 7 of those, he could only put 1 home somewhere on those 7 parcels.
Correct.
Why?
On all
I
of
mean,
them?
I could see a single home on every 40 or
Every
whatever,
35 acres or whatever?
or even that way. I mean, it's certainly not a development. And why would you just, 1 home for that entire, I mean, each one of those is a separate tax parcel. It is not one gigantic, one single tax parcel farm. All right, it's not like a
So,
ranch out
so
west.
what are you taking away from him?
The
what is
potential
he
to make
losing?
money.
No, he can sell that
yes.
development right.
No,
Yes,
yes, he can.
He can sell it.
But how many times have we seen development rights being sold wholesale versus selling directly retail right to a potential home buyer? A lot. There's a lot of difference. Ask Gallery. There's a big difference.
So you're saying
For the-
he's limited on what he can do?
Correct, he
By
is. It's
by
limiting him, correct. And I understand where you're coming from about the developments and so on and so forth, the subdivision aspect of it. All right,
But you don't want a lot of little homes spread out over 340 feet.
Who
why
doesn't?
not? We do it everywhere else.
Well, they don't want it because it makes it harder then for them to.
Well, they don't want to, yeah, but we're
To
talking
plan
a landowner. It's his property that probably had dreams of doing something someday. And now he doesn't really have the ability to do what he could have done before this.
I was mentioning that there's a sanitary interceptor sitting right there. So yeah, we have 2 different perspectives, how,
Yeah.
you look at development, you look at development, and there's that interceptor that's sitting right there, and it's right next to a tremendous size and significant open space amenity. And that how we look at development, Mark's Farms would not want to carve off one part of every 40. They would be losing money at that point. They'd be better off doing a subdivision because it's next to a large open space amenity. It's right next to the sanitary interceptor,
Mhm.
and our water isn't too far away. And so I don't think they would be losing. You can argue different perspectives, but I don't think they would be losing out.
Losing in 50 years.
I think they have some pretty good options.
Their attractiveness to a developer would go
Yeah.
way up.
Yeah, I would think so.
Mark Roffers is online. He has asked if possible he wouldn't mind saying a few things. Do you want him to?
Sure.
Hi, everyone.
Did you hear that, Mark?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Very good. Well, thanks. Kim wanted to know if I could just sit in, and I tried to sit quietly, but I just couldn't help myself. So I think just a couple of observations, and I've been on both sides of boundary agreements in the past in many cases and places. I think it's important, and you're starting to do this, to compare what opportunities and challenges a property owner might have under the agreement versus no agreement at all. And so it is definitely a fact that the city of Madison hasn't annexed any land, because it hasn't been adjacent to the town of Cottage Grove. That's changed. So even if there is no boundary agreement, there still could very well be annexations of town property to the city. So that's something important to keep in mind as you think about this agreement going forward. I do think it's important to put yourself in the shoes of the property owners and to keep it so it appears that they have similar range of options, or maybe just different options than they have today. So what the city is asking, which is very common, is that land in blue be kept as open as possible, providing for a limited house for son or daughter kind of situation. And, in exchange for that, the town would secure a little bit of certainty itself in knowing where the city could not annex property. And so that I think is important to keep in mind as well. The other thing you've started to talk about, negotiating points, and this is the city's proposal, and you're welcome as the town to suggest, counter proposals as you see this agreement evolve. So, what you're saying isn't out of the realm of possibility. It's just, probably, you're suggesting some proposals that maybe could be worked into some future discussions with the city. And then the city, as they said, needs to respond to those accordingly. The other thing I just want to comment on, I think this, is that extraterritorial jurisdiction is different than annexation. And in fact, one municipality could annex land in another municipality's extraterritorial jurisdiction. It doesn't control that way. So I think, it is important for the city and town within the blue area and elsewhere to see if, the respective villages can get on board with this plan as well. Because without it, then the municipalities, both of them that are represented in the room today, could see another village, another community annexing land that they thought was protected or slated to go one place or the other. And so I think those are just my broad observations of this agreement. I think the great asset of this agreement to the town is its term. 40 years is a long period of time to provide its certainty from one of the fastest, if not the fastest growing municipality in the state of Wisconsin. So that's something. And I think that term of the agreement, the 40-year proposal, is important as you think about the long range preservation of the town as a functioning entity in Dane County. So I'm happy to try to answer any questions you have, but I couldn't shut up, so I just thought I'd share that with you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anyone want to adjourn?
We adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Williams, second by Duplay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Both same sign, motion carries.
What's yours?
If I can get up.
It's very.
Do you have another one?
You get more of those?